The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities. 43 different species sat in their special chairs, breathing different air and living under different lights. The air buzzed with translation devices working overtime, turning clicks and whistles and hums into words everyone could understand. Ambassador Tejo stood at the human table, watching the holographic display in the center of the room. The image showed a dark area of space that seemed to eat light itself. Stars went into it and never came out. Planets vanished without a trace. Even light bent wrong around its edges. "The Void Nexus," announced the council speaker, a tall blue creature with too many arms. "It grows larger every day. Soon it will reach the core worlds." Dr. Yunmi leaned forward in her chair, studying the data streaming past. She was humanity's best scientist when it came to understanding alien life. The numbers were bad, very bad. The speaker continued, "Beyond the Nexus lies an ancient facility built by the Forerunners. Inside that facility is a weapon that can stop the Devourers before they consume everything we know." Murmurs filled the hall. The Devourers were the real problem. They came from the dark between galaxies, eating reality itself. Wherever they touched, nothing remained. Not destroyed, just gone like it never existed at all. "We need volunteers," the speaker said. "One ship, one crew. A journey through the Void Nexus to retrieve this weapon." The first to respond was Ambassador Christia of the Hegemony. Her people were made of living crystal and thought in mathematics. "We have run the calculations. The probability of success is 0.03%. This is statistical suicide." The flowing ones rippled in their water tanks. Their translator crackled. "Our liquid forms cannot survive the reality distortions. We must decline." One by one, species after species gave their reasons. The Razorclaw Collective, who loved fighting more than breathing, simply said, "Too dangerous even for us." The Night Flyers, who could travel between dimensions, shook their heads. "The space there is broken. We cannot fly through broken space." Captain Jinwoo watched it all with growing amusement. He was the commander of the exploration ship called Resilience. He had short black hair and scars on his hands from fixing engines himself. Next to him sat his crew, all humans, all watching the greatest powers in the galaxy back away from a challenge. When the last species had declined, the speaker turned to the human table with an apologetic expression. "Honorable humans, we understand if you also must decline. The risks are beyond calculation." Tejo looked at Jinwoo. Jinwoo looked at his crew. Engineer Boram was already pulling up ship specifications on her tablet. Navigator Hyunsu was studying star charts. Pilot Dong Hyun was cracking his knuckles like he was getting ready for work. Jinwoo stood up slowly. The entire hall went quiet. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly," he said. "You want us to fly through some weird space, find an ancient building, grab a weapon, and bring it back to save the galaxy?" The speaker's translation device struggled with Jinwoo's casual tone. "That is a simplified version, yes. But Captain, you must understand the dangers. Reality itself breaks down in the Nexus. Time flows backward. Gravity points in all directions. Space folds in on itself. Your ship could be scattered across 17 dimensions." Jinwoo looked at his crew again. Boram shrugged. Hyunsu nodded. "Donghyun was already checking his flight controls, is that it?" Jinwoo asked. "We thought you were going to ask us to do something difficult." The hall erupted in shocked chatter. Translator devices overloaded, trying to process the amazement of 43 species all talking at once. "Captain," the speaker said when the noise died down, "perhaps you do not fully comprehend the nature of the Void Nexus. It is not merely dangerous. It is impossible. The laws of physics do not apply there." Dr. Yunmi stood up next to Jinwoo. She was smaller than the captain, but her voice carried just as well. "With respect, speaker, the laws of physics always apply. They just apply differently sometimes." "But the reality distortions are data points," Yunmi interrupted. "Patterns we haven't learned to read yet." Weapons specialist Major So Young joined them. She had muscle scars from handling alien weapons and a smile that made enemies nervous. "Every mission brief I've ever read said something was impossible right up until we did it." The speaker looked around the hall for support. The other species were whispering among themselves, some in languages that sounded like singing, others in clicks and whistles that hurt human ears. "But the simulations," the speaker tried again. "Every computer model shows complete failure." Navigation Officer Hyun-soo laughed. She had learned to fly in asteroid fields where one mistake meant death. "Computer models are just guesses made by machines." "We're not machines." Technician Minho, the youngest of the crew, raised his hand like he was in school. Question: has anyone actually tried flying through this thing? Or are we all just scared of the computer's math? The hall went very quiet. The truth was obvious to everyone. No one had tried because the computers said not to. Jin Woo looked around at all the alien faces staring at them. Here's the thing, he said. You're all thinking like this space is out to kill us. What if it's not? What if it's just different? Engineer Boram was reading through the technical data on her tablet. Captain, looking at these readings, I think I can modify our engines to work with the distortions instead of against them. How long do you need? Jin Woo asked. Give me 2 days to run some tests. You have 1 day. Done. The speaker raised several hands in confusion. You are accepting this mission? Just like that? Taeho smiled. It was the kind of smile that had worried aliens across the galaxy for 50 years. Speaker, my people have a saying. The difficult we do immediately. The impossible just takes a little longer. But the odds are made to be beaten, Jin Woo finished. When do we leave? The hall buzzed with activity as species began placing bets on whether the humans would survive the first hour in the Void Nexus. Most gave them less than that. But in the human section, Boram was already making supply lists. Hyun-soo was calculating jump coordinates. Dong-hyun was running pre-flight checks from memory. And Jin Woo was grinning like a man who had just been handed the best challenge of his life. Is that really it? He asked Taeho quietly. That's really it. Good, I was getting bored. The Resilience sat in Dock Bay 7, surrounded by the best engineers from 40 different species. They all wanted to watch the humans prepare for what everyone believed was certain death. Chief Engineer Boram crawled under the ship's main drive, her voice echoing from inside the engine compartment. Hand me the quantum wrench, she called out. Her assistant, a young human named Jae-min, passed her the tool. Not that one. The blue one that hums. Above them, Counselor Vexhai of the Mathematics Guild floated in his hover chair. His people were pure logic, existing only to solve equations and predict outcomes. Engineer Boram, he said, his voice like a computer. Our calculations show your modifications will tear your ship apart. Boram's head popped out from under the engine. There was grease on her cheek and a smile on her face. Your calculations assume normal space. This isn't normal space. Precisely why this mission is impossible. Or why it might actually work. Boram disappeared back under the engine. Sparks flew out, followed by some creative human cursing. In the navigation room, Hyun-soo spread star charts across 3 tables. The chart showed normal space in blue, but the Void Nexus was just black. No stars, no markers, no reference points. How do you plan to navigate through nothing? Asked Captain Ziltorn of the Starwalker fleet. His people had been exploring space since before humans learned to make fire. Hyun-soo looked up from her charts. Her hair was tied back and her eyes were tired from studying data for 18 hours straight. The same way your ancestors navigated oceans before they had maps. By reading the currents. There are no currents in space and there are always currents. You just have to know what to look for. Hyun-soo pointed to the edge of the nexus where space began to bend. See how the light distorts here? That's not random. It's following a pattern. Ziltoran's 4 eyes studied the data. His people had the best navigation technology in the galaxy. Our instruments cannot detect any pattern. That's because you're looking with instruments. Hyun-soo tapped her temple. Sometimes you have to look with this. Across the dock, Dr. Yoon-mi was having her own argument with the Galactic Council's best scientists. They had gathered in conference room 12 and the air was thick with translation devices working overtime. The reality distortions will scramble your crew's brains, insisted Dr. Morthak, whose people had studied physics for 10,000 years. Exposure to that level of spatial anomaly causes madness. Yoon-mi sipped her coffee and reviewed the medical data on her tablet. Only if you fight it. What if we don't fight it? I don't understand. Your people try to maintain normal brain patterns when exposed to reality distortion. That's like trying to swim upstream in a river. What if we let our brains adapt instead? The room went silent. The idea of letting alien phenomena change human biology was horrifying to most species. That could kill you, whispered Dr. Sithara of the Healing Guild. Or, it could let us survive where others can't. Yoon-mi showed them her research. Human brains are plastic, we adapt. When we learn new languages, our brains rewire themselves. When we live in different gravity, our bodies adjust. Why should this be different? Because it's not natural. Neither is spaceflight, but we do that too. In the ship's weapons bay, Major So Young was explaining her strategy to General Krexfor of the War Council. The general was 8 feet tall with forearms and scars that told stories of 100 battles. You cannot fight what you cannot see, Krexfor rumbled. The entities in the Nexus are not physical. How do you shoot something that doesn't exist? So Young finished checking her weapons and looked up at the general. Who says I'm planning to shoot anything? You are a warrior. Warriors fight. Smart warriors choose when to fight. So Young sealed the weapons locker. Sometimes the best way to win a war is to not start one. But if you encounter hostile forces, I'll figure that out when it happens. Making plans for every possible threat is a waste of time. Better to stay flexible and adapt. The general's translator struggled with the concept. In his culture, warriors planned every move in advance. Meanwhile, pilot Dong Hyun was in the ship's cockpit, running simulations with the flight computer. The results were not encouraging. Every simulation ended with the ship being destroyed in the first 10 minutes. Perhaps you should reconsider, suggested Flight Commander Yelnara of the Speed Fleet. Her people were the fastest pilots in the galaxy. Dong Hyun looked at the simulation results and shrugged. These are just guesses. The computer doesn't know what we'll actually find in there. The simulations are based on the best available data. The best available data says it's impossible to fly through the Nexus, but the data also says there's something on the other side that can save the galaxy. So either the data is wrong about it being impossible, or it's wrong about there being something worth saving. Dong Hyun started another simulation. I'm betting it's wrong about the impossible part. As the day wore on, more aliens came to watch the humans prepare. They brought recording devices and measurement tools, documenting what they expected to be the last hours of human foolishness. But something strange was happening. The humans weren't acting like people about to die. They were excited. They laughed and joked while working. They shared meals and told stories about other impossible things they had done. Captain Jinwoo walked through the ship, checking on his crew. In every room he found the same thing: humans doing what humans did best. They were adapting, improvising, and treating the impossible like it was just another day at work. Status report, he asked Bo-Ram in the engine room. Engines are modified and ready. They'll work with the reality distortions instead of fighting them. Probably. Won't know for sure until we try. Jinwoo nodded. That was how humans did things. They tried stuff and figured it out as they went. In the navigation room, Hyun-Soo looked up from her charts. I've got a course plotted. It follows the distortion currents instead of fighting them. Should get us through in half the time the aliens think it would take. Should? Will, definitely will, she grinned. Trust me. Trust was another human thing the aliens didn't understand. They relied on data and calculations and certainty. Humans relied on each other. By the end of the day, news of the human preparations had spread across the galaxy. Betting pools were taking odds on how quickly the resilience would be destroyed. The most optimistic estimates gave them 6 hours. The pessimistic ones said they wouldn't survive the first minute. But in the human quarters, Jinwoo's crew was sleeping peacefully. Tomorrow they would do something no one else in the galaxy thought was possible, and they couldn't wait to get started. The Resilience moved through normal space at top speed, heading toward the edge of the Void Nexus. Captain Jinwoo sat in his command chair, drinking coffee that should have been impossible to drink. The liquid floated in the cup, defying gravity but somehow still tasted normal. 5 minutes to the boundary, called Navigator Hyun-Soo from her station. Her instruments were already going crazy, showing readings that made no sense. Behind the captain stood Emissary Colthanis, the Galactic Council's observer. He was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and too many eyes. He had volunteered to document humanity's final moments, expecting to record their death for scientific study. Captain, Colthanis said, his voice shaking slightly. My instruments are detecting severe reality distortions ahead. Perhaps we should reconsider. Jinwoo took another sip of his floating coffee. Little late for that now. Bo-Ram, how are the engines? Running smooth as silk, Captain, came the reply from engineering. The modifications are holding. Though I should mention that time is running backward down here. Is that a problem? Nah, it just means I finished my repairs before I started them. Very efficient. Colthanis's eyes widened in horror. Time flowing backward was supposed to be impossible. It should have killed everyone in the engine room. 30 seconds to the boundary, Hyun-Soo announced. Everyone hold on to something. This is going to get weird. The ship crossed into the void nexus and immediately everything went wrong in the most spectacular way possible. The gravity shifted, making up become down and left become purple. The walls started breathing. The floor decided it wanted to be a ceiling. Technician Minho found himself hanging upside down in corridor 3, but he just kept working on his repairs like nothing had changed. "Hey, this is actually easier," he called out. "The wires are right where I need them now." In the medical bay, Dr. Yunmi watched her equipment float around the room in impossible patterns. Her heart monitor was reading emotions instead of heartbeats. Her blood pressure gauge was measuring the crew's hopes and dreams. "Fascinating," she said, taking notes on a tablet that was writing her words before she thought them. "The reality distortions aren't random. They're following some kind of logic, just not our logic." On the bridge, pilot Dong-hyun was having the time of his life. His control stick was controlling the ship's mood instead of its direction, but somehow the ship was still flying exactly where he wanted it to go. "This is incredible," he laughed, spinning the ship through a loop that existed in 7 dimensions. "It's like the ship knows where we want to go before we do." Colthanis was having a panic attack. Every one of his scientific instruments was giving readings that shouldn't exist. Temperature gauges were measuring the color blue. Radiation detectors were finding traces of last Thursday. The gravity sensor was insisting that gravity was actually a type of music. "How are you all so calm?" he demanded. "Reality is breaking down around us." "Reality isn't breaking down," Hyun-soo said, reading her navigation instruments that were now showing the ship's emotional state instead of its position. "It's just working differently. Look, according to this, we're feeling our way through space instead of flying through it. That's impossible. So is everything else we've done today." Jin-woo stood up from his chair, which immediately started floating toward the ceiling. "Status reports, everyone." Communications officer Yu Jin looked up from her station, where her equipment was translating the ship's hull into poetry. "Communications are working fine, sir. Though the ship keeps asking me to tell it a story." "What kind of story does it want?" "Adventure stories. I think it's enjoying this trip." Weapons specialist So Young called from her station. "Weapon systems are operational, but they've decided they're actually gardening tools now. On the bright side, I think we could grow some really impressive flowers if we needed to." Engineer Boram's voice came through the communication system, but she was speaking backward in time. "Captain, I'm about to tell you that everything is working perfectly." "Which I just said 5 minutes from now." The ship shuddered and twisted as it moved deeper into the nexus. Outside the viewports, space looked like someone had painted it with colors that didn't exist. Stars spelled out words in languages no one had ever heard. Planets danced in orbits that followed musical scales instead of physics. "Distance to the facility?" Jin-woo asked. Hyun-soo checked her instruments, which were now measuring distance in units of friendship. "About 73 good memories away, sir. Should arrive in approximately the time it takes to fall in love." "How long is that in normal time?" "What's normal time?" It was a good question. Inside the nexus, time moved like thick honey in some places and like lightning in others. Seconds stretched into hours, then snapped back to minutes. The crew aged backward, then forward, then sideways through dimensions that didn't have names, but somehow they kept working. Humans adapted to the impossible like they adapted to everything else, by treating it as just another day at the office. "Contact ahead," Yujin announced. Her communications panel was now receiving messages from the crew's childhood imaginary friends. Something big, really big. The view screen flickered and showed them their destination. The Forerunner facility wasn't a building in any sense that made sense. It was a structure made of crystallized mathematics, a palace built from pure equations. It existed in 17 dimensions simultaneously, and somehow looked perfectly normal. "There it is," Jinwoo said. "The thing that's supposed to save the galaxy." The facility was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. It was older than most stars, but it looked brand new. It was enormous, but it felt cozy. It was clearly alien, but it seemed familiar, like something from a half-remembered dream. "How do we dock with something made of math?" Dong-hyun asked. "Carefully," Hyun-soo replied. "I'm reading docking instructions written in the ship's navigation computer. Apparently we just have to think friendly thoughts and ask nicely." "Ask what nicely?" "The facility. It's alive, sort of. It's been waiting for someone to visit." Colthanis stared at them all in amazement. "You're treating this like it's normal." Dr. Yunmi looked up from her instruments, which were now diagnosing the mental health of nearby planets. Nothing about this is normal. But normal is just what we're used to. Give us a few more hours and this will be normal too. The ship approached the facility, which opened to welcome them like a flower blooming. The docking bay was made of crystallized time and had air that tasted like childhood memories. Successful docking, Dong-hyun announced. The ship says thank you and asks if we brought snacks. Jinwoo smiled and headed toward the airlock. His crew followed him, walking on walls that had decided to be floors and breathing air that was 30% oxygen, 20% nitrogen, and 50% pure possibility. Come on, he said to his crew. Let's go save the galaxy. Behind them, Kolthanis floated in his chair, frantically taking notes on paper that was writing his thoughts for him. He had come to document human failure. Instead, he was witnessing human triumph over the impossible. And he was starting to understand why the rest of the galaxy was always so surprised by what humans could do. The inside of the Forerunner facility was even stranger than the outside. The corridors were made of frozen lightning, and the walls showed movies of things that might happen tomorrow. Captain Jinwoo led his team through hallways where up and down were matters of personal opinion, and the floor occasionally asked polite questions about their day, motion. Sensors are picking up something big ahead, reported Sergeant Woo-jin, though his scanner was actually detecting the emotional state of nearby furniture. Dr. Yunmi walked beside him, her medical scanner beeping cheerfully as it analyzed the philosophical implications of their footsteps. The facility is definitely alive. Not biological, but alive in its own way. It's been lonely. How can you tell? Asked Communications Officer Yu-jin. The walls keep trying to start conversations. The team moved deeper into the facility, past rooms full of machines that looked like they were built from crystallized music and doorways that only existed when nobody was looking directly at them. Emergency lights glowed with colors that didn't have names, casting shadows that waved hello. Emissary Kolthanis floated behind them in his hover chair, his recording equipment struggling to document what they were seeing. His cameras kept taking pictures of emotions instead of objects, and his audio recorders were capturing the sound of colors. This is impossible, he muttered for the 100th time. Buildings cannot be alive. Mathematics cannot be crystallized. Light cannot be frozen. Sure it can, said Technician Minho, running his hand along a wall that was purring like a cat. It's just not easy. These Forerunner guys must have been really smart. They reached a massive chamber at the heart of the facility. The room was circular, with walls that stretched up into infinity and down into forever. In the center stood something that might have been a computer, if computers could be made from pure thought and decorated with rainbow fractals. The central processing unit, Dr. Unmi said, reading her scanner that was now translating alien mathematics into human poetry. It's been running for millions of years, waiting for someone to talk to. Captain Jinwoo stepped forward. The floor beneath his feet rippled like water, but held his weight. Hello, he said simply. The response was immediate. Light exploded from the central unit, not harsh and blinding, but warm and welcoming. The walls began displaying images, star charts, technical diagrams, and what looked like family photos of extinct civilizations. A voice filled the chamber, speaking in perfect human language but with an accent that sounded like singing mathematics. Welcome, travelers from the young galaxy. I am the Keeper. I have been waiting so long for someone to visit. The team exchanged glances. All their briefings had said the Forerunner facility was automated, just a weapons storage system. Nobody had mentioned it had a personality. Keeper, Dr. Yunmi said, stepping forward with the careful politeness humans used when meeting something they didn't understand. We've come seeking help. Our galaxy is being threatened by entities called Devourers. Ah, yes, the Lost Ones. The Keeper's voice was sad now, like wind through empty houses. They are not evil, you know. They are simply homesick. Homesick? Jinwoo asked. Images appeared on the walls. A galaxy far away, older and stranger than their own. It was beautiful, full of impossible colors and structures that defied physics. Then the images showed it dying, collapsing in on itself as reality broke down. The Lost Ones came from a universe that ended, the Keeper explained. When their home died, they fled here, but they do not know how to exist in your reality without consuming it. They eat your space and time because they are trying to build a new home and do not know how to ask for help. Major So-Young frowned, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon before remembering that her guns had turned into gardening tools. So they're refugees? Refugees who have forgotten they were once people. The Keeper showed them more images, the Devourers as they once were, beautiful creatures of living energy who built cities from crystallized starlight. They have been lost so long they have forgotten what they were. They know only hunger and the need to build. And the weapon we came for? Jinwoo asked. The Keeper laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with the music of distant stars. There is no weapon. Weapons cannot solve homesickness. But there is something better. The central processing unit began to glow brighter and knowledge flowed into their minds like warm honey. Not painful downloads of alien data, but gentle understanding that settled into their thoughts like memories they had always had. They learned about the true nature of reality, how space and time were just suggestions that could be politely ignored. They discovered the art of building homes from pure possibility, and the science of teaching lost souls to remember what they once were. You want us to be counselors? Sergeant Wu Jin asked. Like therapy for cosmic entities? That's actually not a bad way to put it, Dr. Yunmi said, processing the new knowledge. They're not monsters. They're trauma victims acting out because they don't know how to heal. The Keeper showed them how to communicate with the Devourers, how to speak in the language of fundamental forces and express concepts in patterns of gravity and light. It was like learning to sing in mathematics while dancing in 4 dimensions. This is incredible, Yujin said, her communications training suddenly making sense in ways it never had before. It's not just communication. It's empathy translated into physics. Technician Minho was studying the technical specifications that were writing themselves in the air around him. So instead of fighting them, we help them remember who they used to be. And then we help them build a proper home, Engineer Boram added, her practical mind already working on the construction problems. A place where they can exist without eating our reality. The knowledge kept flowing, teaching them about dimensional engineering and reality architecture. They learned how to build stable pocket universes and how to terraform space itself. It was like getting a crash course in cosmic construction management. But why us? Captain Jinwoo asked. Why didn't you share this with the other species? The Keeper's voice grew warm with something like affection. Because they would have tried to force the knowledge to work their way. Humans adapt. You learn new things by becoming new people. The others try to stay the same and make the universe change around them. It was true. The team could feel themselves changing as the knowledge settled into their minds. Not losing their humanity, but gaining something extra, like learning a new language that came with new ways of thinking. The crystalline hegemony would have tried to calculate the perfect solution, the Keeper continued. The war fleet would have looked for ways to weaponize the knowledge. The Mathematics Guild would have spent centuries debating the theoretical implications. And humans? Dr. Yunmi asked. Humans will try it and figure out the details as they go, which is exactly what the lost ones need. Someone willing to improvise with compassion. The knowledge transfer completed, leaving the team feeling like they had earned advanced degrees in subjects they couldn't have imagined that morning. But instead of feeling overwhelmed, they felt excited. This was just another challenge to figure out. So, Captain Jinwoo said, looking around at his crew. Anyone else think this sounds like fun? The unanimous response was a grin that would have terrified most of the galaxy. They were about to attempt something that had never been tried before. Group therapy for reality-eating cosmic entities. And they couldn't wait to get started. The journey back through the Void Nexus was completely different from the trip in. The Resilience moved through impossible space like it belonged there, riding currents of crystallized possibility and surfing waves of liquid time. The ship itself seemed happier, humming contentedly as reality bent around it in friendly ways. Captain Jinwoo sat in his command chair, which had decided to be made of comfortable clouds today. His crew was scattered around the bridge, all of them quietly processing the knowledge they had gained from the Keeper. It was like having new rooms in their brains, filled with information about things they had never imagined. Captain, Navigator Hyun-soo called from her station. I'm picking up Devourer activity ahead. Looks like we're going to meet them sooner than expected. Through the view screen, they could see the edge of consumed space where the Devourers had been feeding. It looked like someone had taken bites out of reality itself, leaving holes where stars and planets used to be. Perfect, Jinwoo said, standing up from his cloud chair. Yujin, Can you establish communication using what the Keeper taught us? Communications Officer Yu Jin was already working at her station, her equipment now configured to speak in patterns of gravity and light. I think so, sir. It's like learning to sing with mathematics. Give me a moment to tune the harmonics. Dr. Eunmi studied her readings, which were now showing the emotional states of nearby space-time distortions. I'm detecting massive confusion ahead. Fear, hunger, and something that might be homesickness amplified to cosmic scales. That matches what the Keeper told us, Major So Young observed. Her weapons had turned back into proper guns, but she had no intention of using them. Instead, she was carrying a toolkit for building dimensional structures. They're not attacking because they're evil. They're attacking because they don't know how to ask for help. The first devourer appeared on their sensors like a wound in space. It was enormous, bigger than most moons, and it moved through reality like a shark swimming through water. Where it touched, stars simply ceased to exist. Initiating contact, Eugene announced. She began broadcasting in the language the Keeper had taught them. A combination of gravitational waves, quantum fluctuations, and pure emotional intention translated into physics. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The Devourer stopped moving and turned toward their ship. But instead of attacking, it did something that shocked Emissary Colthanus to his core. It spoke. Not in words, but in concepts that bypassed language entirely. The message flooded their minds with images of loss, confusion, and desperate longing. The creature was trying to tell them about the home it had lost, the people it had been, and the terrible hunger that never stopped. It's working, Dr. Eunmi said, tears streaming down her face as she felt the Devourer's pain. It remembers. It's starting to remember who it used to be. More Devourers appeared, drawn by the first one's call. Soon the Resilience was surrounded by dozens of the massive entities, all of them broadcasting their confusion and longing into space. Captain Jinwoo took a deep breath. This was it. The moment when they would either save the galaxy or accidentally make everything much worse. All right, people. Time to do some cosmic counseling. Everyone remember what the Keeper taught us about building homes from pure possibility? Engineer Boram grinned from her station. Captain, I've been dreaming about dimensional architecture all night. I think I can build them something better than what they lost. Technician Min-ho, Jinwoo continued. Can you help them remember their original forms? Already on it, sir. I'm broadcasting memory reconstruction patterns. It's like showing someone old family photos, but with quantum mechanics. The work began in earnest. The human crew of the Resilience became teachers, therapists, and construction workers all at once. They helped the Devourers remember that they had once been beings of pure energy who built cities from starlight. They taught them how to create homes that didn't require consuming other people's reality. Sergeant Wu Jin found himself explaining the concept of asking for help instead of just taking what you needed. It's like this, he broadcast to a particularly large Devourer. Instead of eating the galaxy, you just say, hey, we need a place to live. Can you help us figure something out? The Devourer's response was the cosmic equivalent of, oh, we can do that? Dr. Eunmi worked with their psychological recovery, helping them process the trauma of losing their entire universe. Grief is normal, she explained in patterns of healing light. But grief doesn't have to mean destroying everything around you. Pilot Donghyun taught them how to move through space without consuming it, showing them how to surf the currents of reality instead of devouring them. It's more fun this way, he demonstrated, making the ship dance through dimensions. And nobody gets hurt. The breakthrough came when Engineer Boram successfully helped the first Devourer construct a stable pocket dimension, a small universe where it could exist without affecting normal space. The creature's joy was so intense it lit up 3 solar systems. Word spread quickly among the Devourers. They began working together, sharing memories and helping each other remember their original forms. Soon, the space around the Resilience was filled with beings of living light, creating homes from pure mathematics and singing songs that made reality itself dance. This is incredible, Emissary Colthanus whispered, his recording equipment finally able to document something that made sense. You've turned a galactic crisis into a neighborhood construction project. The journey back to Council space took 3 weeks, but it felt like coming home from a successful family reunion. The Resilience was accompanied by a fleet of reformed Devourers, all eager to meet their new galactic neighbors and apologize for the misunderstanding about eating reality. When they arrived at the Council station, The reception was unlike anything in galactic history. Every species had representatives waiting, expecting to hear news of humanity's heroic sacrifice. Instead, they got Captain Jin Woo stepping off his ship with a smile, and a delegation of reformed cosmic entities trailing behind him. Mission accomplished, Jin Woo announced to the packed assembly hall. The Devourer crisis is over. Turns out they weren't evil, just homesick. We helped them work through some issues. The hall was dead silent as the implications sank in. The greatest threat the galaxy had ever faced had been resolved not through superior firepower or ancient weapons, but through therapy and construction assistance. How? The speaker managed to ask. Dr. Unmi stepped forward. We listened to them. Then we helped them remember who they used to be. Then we helped them build new homes so they wouldn't need to eat ours. And they agreed to this? Counselor Vexai asked, his mathematical mind struggling to process the concept. One of the former devourers floated forward, its form now stabilized into something like a living aurora. When it spoke, the words came through Eugen's translation equipment as pure music. We are grateful to the humans for helping us remember. We were lost, but they found us. We will be good neighbors. Major So Young added, we've also arranged a cultural exchange program. Turns out they're really good at dimensional architecture, and we're good at emotional support. Win-win situation. The questions came fast and frantic. How had they communicated? How had they convinced the Devourers to stop? How had they built new universes in 3 weeks? Captain Jinwoo listened to them all with growing amusement. Finally, he held up his hand for quiet. Here's the thing, he said. You all kept thinking this was a military problem that needed a military solution. But it wasn't. It was a refugee crisis that needed compassion and some creative construction work. But the impossibility of the mission, the speaker protested. The calculations showed. The calculations were wrong, Engineer Boram interrupted cheerfully. They always are when you're dealing with something completely new. That's why you actually try things instead of just thinking about them. Emissary Cole Thanos stood up in his hover chair. If I may address the council, he said formally. I witnessed everything. The humans succeeded because they treated the impossible as merely difficult. They adapted to circumstances that should have killed them. They solved problems by refusing to accept that the problems were unsolvable. He paused, looking around the hall at all the species who had declared the mission impossible. They were asked to save the galaxy, he continued. And they did it by making friends with the things that were destroying it. They turned the greatest threat we've ever faced into the galaxy's newest citizens. The council session ended with the former Devourers being officially welcomed as the galaxy's 44th member species. They were assigned a section of empty space where they could build their new civilization, with human advisors to help them adjust to normal physics. As the crowds dispersed and the celebrations began, Captain Jinwoo found his crew in their usual spot, the ship's mess hall, sharing coffee and planning their next impossible mission. So, he said, settling into his chair, what's on the schedule for next week? Navigator Hyunsu checked her tablet. The Spiral Arm Collective wants us to fix their sun that keeps flickering in and out of existence. The one that's been having an identity crisis? That's the one. Apparently it can't decide if it wants to be a red giant or a white dwarf.